Jungkook, Yin called softly one afternoon, clinging sweetly to her husband's arm. He had just arrived home, his face tense and weary after a grueling meeting. Can you help me try on some dresses? My designer came, and I want your opinion. Jungkook took a deep breath. All he wanted was to lie down, take a shower, or just sit in silence without thinking about anything. Now, can't you pick them yourself? Yin tightened her hold on his arm. But I want to hear what you think. Her voice turned into a whine, her ultimate weapon to melt her cold husband's heart, and luckily, it usually worked. And it did. Jungkook looked at her sulky face. Behind her childish tone, there was a hint of innocence he couldn't ignore. He let out a long sigh. Alright, he took off his suit and loosened his tie. By the time he entered the living room, Yin was already surrounded by luxurious fabrics and a smiling designer. She wore the first gown and twirled in front of him with a bright smile. What do you think? Pretty, right? Jungkook forced a smile. Yeah, pretty. You don't sound excited, Yin pouted. Don't you like it? I'm just a little tired, Yin, Jungkook admitted. Hearing that, Yin's face turned sulky again. This is important to me, Jungkook. The gown is for tomorrow night's event. I have to look perfect. Jungkook held himself back. Tomorrow night's event was a meeting with one of his new business associates, who might actually be setting a trap. His mind should be focused on security and strategies, not silk dresses. But he nodded. Keep trying them on. I'll sit here. The dress-fitting session felt endless for him. Every gown demanded a comment, every detail was discussed at length, while his mind raced with security plans, possible escape routes, and names to keep an eye on. Yin, on the other hand, was completely immersed in her own world, seemingly oblivious to the tension and exhaustion radiating from her husband. Scenes like this happened often. Despite his busy schedule and fatigue, Jungkook often gave in to Yin's seemingly trivial requests. At first, it was his way of showing he cared, his way of making sure Yin felt accepted and not neglected, even though their marriage had been arranged by their parents. He never wanted Yin to feel unwanted or left out. That night, after a long day, they returned to the quiet ritual that had become second nature to them. Yin lay beside Jungkook, her arms wrapped around his body, her head resting on his chest, while Jungkook's hand gently ran through her hair. I rearranged the plants in the backyard today, Yin said softly but with clear enthusiasm. I felt the bench was too close to the fence, so I moved everything a bit toward the center. Now the breeze feels better, especially in the late afternoon. Jungkook nodded slightly without saying much, but his hand didn't stop stroking her head. That was his only way of showing he was listening. This afternoon I also met with the head maid. I asked them to reorganize the bookshelf in the reading room, and now the space feels a lot more open. I'm sure you'll feel more comfortable reading there. Thank you, Jungkook replied shortly. His tone was flat, but not cold, more like someone who was deeply tired yet still trying to stay present. Yin lifted her head slightly, her gaze tracing his jaw and neck. You never really comment on what I do around the house, but you always listen to what I say, don't you? Jungkook didn't answer right away, but after a few seconds, he pulled Yin closer into his arms. Yeah, I listen. The words were brief, but enough to make Yin smile faintly. She knew Jungkook wasn't the type to be romantic or sweet with words, but she also knew the way he held her was real. The way he stroked her hair was real. His presence beside her every night in bed was real. Tomorrow I'm going to clean out the storage room near the garage. You've kept so much stuff in there, you know, Yin continued, now in a teasing tone. If I find any old love letters, I'll read them out loud at the dining room. Jungkook sighed quietly. I'm not that kind of man. You won't find anything like that. Oh, really? You keep too many secrets, Yin replied quickly. Jungkook didn't answer. He simply pulled the blanket up over both of them. In the silence that followed, Yin still wore a small smile. She knew Jungkook might never be the talkative type, but nights like this, with his arms around her, his gentle touches, and his honest, simple replies, were more than enough to bring her peace. As time went on, Jungkook's tolerance for Yin's clingy nature began to wear thin. His life grew increasingly hectic and demanding. Late-night meetings, sudden business trips, and difficult decisions drained his energy. He came home to the mansion with an exhausted body and a mind filled with strategies, numbers, and threats. What he needed was peace, or at least understanding. But Yin remained the same. She didn't read the room. She still demanded attention, still whined over trivial things, still expected Jungkook to indulge her wishes right then and there, regardless of his condition. One night, Jungkook came home much later than usual. His face was worn out, his eyes exhausted. He barely had the strength to walk to the bedroom. All he wanted was a shower, a change of clothes, and a few hours of sleep before dawn arrived and his responsibilities returned. He found Yin sitting on the bed, legs crossed, holding her phone. The room was dim, lit only by the bedside lamp. "Jungkook, you're home," Yin exclaimed cheerfully, completely unaware of the fatigue on her husband's face. "I've been waiting for you. There's a great new movie. Let's watch it now, okay?" Jungkook stopped at the doorway, his breathing heavy. "Yin, I'm really tired tonight. I just want to sleep." His voice was hoarse. "Oh, come on, just for a little while. The movie's really fun. It's a romantic comedy. I don't want to watch it alone," Yin whined, putting down her phone. "You promised you'd watch a movie with me sometime." "I never promised I'd watch one right when you asked," Jungkook replied flatly as he stepped inside and began taking off his suit. "And even if I did, sometimes doesn't mean when I'm on the verge of collapsing like this. But I want to watch it now. I even prepared snacks for us," Yin insisted, her voice rising an octave. "Why are you always so busy? I'm bored being stuck in this mansion all the time, you know." Jungkook's patience was thinning. He walked over to the nearest sofa and sat down, rubbing his temples. "Yin, I just finished dealing with a situation that could have gotten people killed. I don't have the energy to sit and watch a movie tonight. So my problems don't matter now?" Yin shot back, her tone turning defensive. "You're always busy, always have some excuse. When will you ever make time for me? Hey, I just wanted you to watch a movie with me." "You don't understand," Jungkook snapped, his voice rising. "I risk my life every day. I come home hoping for just a bit of rest, and all you think about is your own comfort and entertainment. Can't you see I'm exhausted? Don't you care?" Yin froze at the tone of his voice. He had never spoken so harshly to her before. "I do care," she replied, her eyes brimming with tears. "But you never care about how I feel. I'm lonely here every single day. I just want a little interaction with you. Not only when we're about to go to sleep. I feel invisible here." "Invisible?" Jungkook let out a bitter laugh, a sound that felt cruel and foreign to Yin's ears. "You're surrounded by staff who cater to your every whim. You have everything, and you say I'm ignoring you just because I can't sit and watch a movie? You're really..." He stopped for a second, searching for the word, one that hurt, born out of his buried frustration. "You're really selfish, Yin." That word stabbed Yin straight in the chest. Selfish. She had never been called that in her life. Yes, she often got what she wanted, but not because she meant to hurt anyone. That was just how her life had always been. "Selfish?" Yin echoed, her voice trembling. "You're calling me selfish? After everything? After all this?" She gestured around the luxurious bedroom. "I live in your terrifying world, far from everything I've ever known, and you call me selfish just because I want to spend a little time with you? You don't understand. You never understand what I go through." Jungkook shot back, rising from the sofa. The room now felt heavy with his anger. "You only see yourself, your own wants. You're spoiled and selfish." Yin stood still, shocked and hurt. The tears she had been holding back finally fell. "Fine," she said, her voice quiet but filled with pain. "If that's what you think of me, spoiled, selfish." She drew in a shaky breath before continuing. "Then maybe I shouldn't bother you anymore." Jungkook let out a harsh breath. "I'm too tired to argue with you, Yin. I'm too tired for this." He turned and walked into the bathroom. The door shut with a sharp thud, leaving Yin alone in the painful silence. Her tears finally streamed freely down her cheeks. Jungkook's words echoed in her mind. Selfish, childish. Was that really who she was? The days that followed felt like living in a state of frozen silence. The air inside the mansion was thick and tense, especially between Jungkook and Yin. They avoided eye contact and didn't speak to each other. The dining table, once filled with light-hearted conversation, was now consumed by an uncomfortable silence. Jungkook stuck to his packed routine, leaving the mansion early in the morning and returning late at night. Yin remained at home, going through her daily activities as usual, but without the smiles or laughter that once filled the space. The maids and bodyguards sensed the tension between their master and mistress. They moved carefully, afraid to make a wrong step. Jungkook felt guilty, but his pride was too high to let him apologize first, especially since Yin had acted as if he didn't exist and completely ignored him. Meanwhile, Yin was deeply hurt by Jungkook's words, and her pride wouldn't allow her to approach the man who had called her selfish. The silence between them grew deeper, creating a widening gap that neither dared to cross. On the fourth night after the argument, Jungkook came home earlier than usual. He had been feeling unwell since the afternoon. His head throbbed, his body felt heavy, and chills ran through him despite the warm temperature of the room. He staggered toward his bedroom, hoping to sleep it off and escape the discomfort. But as he tried to unbutton his shirt, his body gave in. He reached up to touch his forehead, and it was burning hot. There was no doubt, he was sick. He hated feeling weak, hated being vulnerable. All he wanted now was to fall asleep. He collapsed onto the bed, wrapped himself in the blanket, and tried to warm his shivering body. But the cold bit at him, interrupted by waves of heat that made his skin feel like it was burning. His throat ached, and every breath felt heavy. Across the room, Yin heard restless movements from the bed. She was sitting on the sofa, reading a book, trying to ignore Jungkook's presence as she had done for the past 4 days. But the sound of Jungkook's dry cough caught her attention. She turned her head and saw Jungkook lying down, shivering, his face pale under the soft glow of the bedroom lamp. Although her heart still ached from his harsh words, Yin's instincts, as a human, as a wife, wouldn't let her ignore the man who was clearly not okay. Hesitantly, she set her book aside and stood from the sofa. She walked slowly toward the bed. "Jungkook," she called softly. Jungkook only mumbled faintly, no response. "You're sick?" Yin asked. She gently placed her hand on his forehead. It was burning hot. She quickly pulled her hand back. "Oh my god, you have a high fever." She immediately headed to the medicine cabinet, grabbing a digital thermometer, fever medicine, and a bowl of warm water with a small towel. When she returned, Jungkook was still lying weakly. Yin sat on the edge of the bed, hesitated for a moment, then gathered her courage. "Open your mouth," she said gently, holding up the thermometer. Jungkook looked at her with tired eyes. He looked so different from the cold, untouchable mafia boss she was used to seeing. He looked fragile. He obediently opened his mouth. The thermometer beeped a few seconds later. Yin looked at the reading and gasped. 39.8 degrees Celsius. That's dangerously high. She poured the fever medicine onto a spoon and held it out to him. "Drink this." Jungkook swallowed the medicine with difficulty. His throat felt like it was on fire. Yin then soaked the towel in warm water, wrung it out, and gently placed it on his forehead. The damp warmth felt soothing to Jungkook. He closed his eyes, savoring the temporary relief. "Why are you?" Jungkook asked weakly, not opening his eyes. "Why am I taking care of you?" She finished his sentence. She paused. "Because you're sick, Jungkook. That's all." Silence fell between them once again. But this time, it was different. There was no tension, no anger, only unspoken pain and quiet concern. Yin continued to change the compress regularly. She tucked the blanket around him more tightly. She even went downstairs to the kitchen to fetch food. Luckily, the maids had prepared soup for dinner that night. When she returned, she helped Jungkook sit up and slowly fed him. "Thank you," Jungkook whispered after finishing the soup. Yin only nodded. Throughout the night, Yin didn't sleep. She sat in the chair beside Jungkook's bed, watching over him, occasionally changing the compress on his forehead, making sure he was breathing steadily. She didn't do this out of obligation alone. Beneath all the hurt and anger, there was a sincere concern for the man who had become her husband. That night, she saw Jungkook's human side, a side that was vulnerable and in need. Yin did everything calmly, without complaint, without asking for anything in return. She didn't act spoiled at all. She carried herself with quiet care and patience. What Jungkook didn't know was that Yin herself wasn't entirely okay. Since that morning, she had felt discomfort in her stomach, a bit of nausea, and a slight dizziness. She thought it was just from stress and lack of sleep after their argument. She ignored it, not wanting to appear weak, especially while her husband was sick. While caring for Jungkook, she experienced waves of nausea and a heavy, throbbing head, but she endured it. From time to time, she held her stomach to ease the discomfort, but only when her back was turned to Jungkook or when he was asleep. She also noticed that her own body temperature felt slightly warm, but she brushed it off. She endured her own pain to take care of Jungkook, unwilling to add to the burden of a man who was already severely ill. Even if that man had hurt her with his words, he was still her husband. A few hours later, as dawn approached, Jungkook's fever finally began to drop. He opened his eyes and found Yin asleep in the chair beside the bed, her head tilted to the side, her small hand still clutching the now cold compressed towel. Her face looked exhausted, and her hair was slightly messy. Jungkook stared at her for a long moment. Seeing his wife sleeping from pure exhaustion after spending the entire night taking care of him after their fight, after he called her selfish, something in Jungkook's heart softened in a way he hadn't expected. He no longer saw just the spoiled version of Yin. but a caring one, a strong one, someone who had put aside her own feelings because, deep down, he knew they were both still hurting. Slowly, with a still slightly trembling hand, he reached out and gently touched her hair. The touch stirred Yin awake. She gasped softly and quickly straightened up. "Jungkook, you're awake?" she asked, her voice hoarse from sleep. Jungkook nodded. "My fever's gone down. Thank you, Yin." Yin gave a faint smile. "You're welcome." Jungkook studied her face closely. There was something off. Her skin looked pale, and there were faint dark circles under her eyes. "Are you okay?" Jungkook asked. Yin nodded too quickly. "Yes, of course." Jungkook wasn't convinced. When Yin tried to stand, she staggered slightly. Jungkook caught her immediately. "Yin, you're so pale," he said, his voice full of concern. He placed his hand on her forehead. It was warm, not as hot as his had been, but definitely not normal. I'm just a little tired," Yin said, trying to pull away from his grasp. But as she moved, a stronger wave of nausea hit her. Her face turned even paler, and she quickly covered her mouth with her hand. "Yin," Jungkook shocked, alarmed. Yin couldn't hold it in. She rushed to the bathroom. Despite still being weak, Jungkook got out of bed and followed her. He heard the sound of her throwing up inside. His heart pounded. He knocked on the door. "Yin, open the door." A moment later, Yin came out, looking weak and drained. Her face was ghostly pale, and she leaned against the wall for support. "Yin, you're sick too?" Jungkook asked, eyes widening as he fully realized her condition. Yin nodded slightly, avoiding his gaze. "A little." "Since when?" he pressed. Since yesterday morning," Yin replied quietly. Jungkook stared at her in disbelief. "You've been sick since yesterday morning, and you still stayed up all night taking care of me? Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to bother you," Yin whispered. "You were already really sick. I thought I could handle it." Jungkook felt like he had been stabbed in the chest. He had called her selfish, yet she had endured her own illness just to care for him. All the accusations he had thrown at her now felt empty and cruel. He stepped forward and gently pulled Yin into his arms. Yin stiffened at first, still hurt by his past words, but the warmth of Jungkook's body, now steadier, and the softness in his tone gradually melted her defenses. She leaned into him, tears filling her eyes, not out of anger this time, but out of overwhelming emotion and relief. "I'm sorry, baby," he whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry for calling you selfish. I was wrong, so wrong." Yin didn't respond. She just cried softly against his chest. "I was tired, I was stressed, and I took it out on you," he continued, voice full of regret. "I didn't see you. I only saw my own problems, and I said something truly hurtful." Yin pulled back slightly and looked up at him, eyes wet. "Those words, they really hurt, Jungkook." "I know," Jungkook said, gently wiping her tears away. "And I deserve it if you're mad at me forever." I won't be mad forever," she whispered. "I was just hurt and offended." Jungkook looked into her eyes, seeing the honesty there. He had never really considered how things looked from her perspective. He had assumed she was fine because she had everything: maids, luxury, comfort. He had forgotten that human connection, attention, and emotional presence meant far more than any of that. "I get it now," Jungkook said softly. "I may have given you everything, but I didn't give you me, not completely." "You're busy," Yin said, though her tone was no longer accusing, just stating a fact. "Being busy is no excuse for ignoring my wife's feelings," Jungkook replied. "I should never have called you selfish, especially when you turned out to be the least selfish person here." He cupped her cheek. "You cared for me when you were sick. You endured your pain just to help me. You even married me and stepped into my dark world. That's not selfish, Yin. That's the heart of someone loving and strong." Yin's cheeks turned a bit red at his praise. She had never thought of herself as strong or nurturing. She had simply followed her heart. I just couldn't leave you alone," Yin said, "even if we were fighting." Jungkook gave her a gentle smile, a smile Yin rarely saw. A smile that only appeared when they were truly alone, and even then, only on rare occasions. "I know I'm difficult," Jungkook said. "My world is difficult, but I want to try. I want to try being a better husband to you. I want to try to understand you more now." "I want to try too," Yin said. "I know I'm a bit spoiled, but I can learn. I'll learn to understand you better." "You already proved that last night," Jungkook said. "You weren't spoiled at all. You were incredible, and you understood me when I needed it most." He hugged her again, this time tighter. Yin returned the embrace, feeling the warmth and strength of her husband, not intimidating now, but comforting. Now, Jungkook said, pulling back a little, you're the one who's sick. It's your turn to be taken care of. He took her hand. Come on, let's go back to bed. I'll take care of you, just like you took care of me. Yin smiled, the first genuine smile Jungkook had seen from her in days. But you're still weak. It's okay, Jungkook said firmly. We can be sick together. He said it with a small smile, one so unexpected that it made Yin let out a soft chuckle. He led Yin back to the bed. They lay down together, leaning into each other. Jungkook carefully tucked the blanket around her. Do you need anything? Water? Medicine? He asked. I just need you here, Yin whispered, settling into his arms. Jungkook held her close. He felt the warmth of her body and realized that despite all their differences, despite the dangerous world he lived in and the comfortable life she had left behind, there was a strong, invisible thread tying them together, genuine care and love, now clearer than ever between them. Not long after, still in Jungkook's arms, a soft whimper escaped from Yin. I actually really missed you, she whispered, her voice small, like a child admitting a mistake. Her fingers clutched his arm tightly, as if afraid he might leave again. Jungkook was silent for a moment, then a gentle smile slowly appeared on his face, warm, calm, and sincere. I missed you too, baby, he replied. Honestly, I missed you every day, but we were both too upset, and too stubborn to admit it first. Yin lifted her face slightly to see his expression, and sure enough, the tenderness in his eyes instantly soothed her heart. Whenever Jungkook spoke softly like that, it always carried a kind of quiet magic she couldn't explain. But the warmth in the air slowly shifted when Jungkook suddenly asked softly, but why are you feeling nauseous? Did you eat something bad? Yin fell silent, trying to think through the possibilities. But the more she tried to remember, the less sense it made. She couldn't recall eating anything unusual. Seeing her confusion, Jungkook frowned slightly and carefully said, as if guessing something that could change everything, could it be? You're pregnant? Yin froze. She immediately looked at him with wide eyes. Huh? Why would you think that? Jungkook looked thoughtful for a moment before answering calmly. Why not? He said softly, still holding her gaze. We've done it often enough, even if not regularly, and we never use protection. You don't take birth control pills either, right? Yin shook her head slowly, still startled by where this conversation was going. So, Jungkook continued gently, as if not wanting to make her panic. It's not unreasonable, especially if you've been feeling nauseous, dizzy, and a bit feverish. Those could be early signs. Yin bit her lower lip, lowering her head while reflexively placing a hand over her stomach. Her chest was filled with confusion, fear, emotion, but also a tiny spark of hope. My period hasn't come yet, but it's supposed to in a few days, she muttered finally, trying to hold on to logic. Jungkook nodded slowly, still watching her closely. Even so, it doesn't mean it's impossible. Yin looked back at him again, this time with a flicker of fear in her eyes. If I am pregnant, would you be mad? The question was soft, but heavy. Jungkook furrowed his brow slightly, then exhaled slowly before answering, why would I be mad? Yin lowered her gaze. Because we never really talked about having kids. Because we just had a huge fight. Because maybe I'm not ready yet. Jungkook didn't answer right away. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, then looked back down at her fragile, vulnerable expression. I'm not gonna lie and say I'm instantly ready to be a dad, but if you really are pregnant, I won't be mad. I'll learn. We'll learn together. Yin's expression began to change slowly. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from relief. She didn't know what to say, so she simply leaned her head on Jungkook's chest, the place where she always felt the safest. I'm scared, she murmured softly. You won't go through this alone. I'm here with you, Jungkook whispered, gently stroking her hair. Silence settled between them again, but this time, it wasn't cold or heavy. It was warm, as if their bodies were slowly filling the emptiness that had grown between them during those days of arguments. Let's go to the hospital tomorrow morning, okay? Jungkook finally said, so we'll know for sure. Yin gave a small nod from within his arms, then softly whispered, if I really am pregnant, I hope the baby looks like you, just, not the cold personality. Jungkook chuckled quietly and hugged her tighter. If they look like you, they'll be clingy and chatty. But loved by their dad, Yin quickly shot back. And their mom, Jungkook added softly, kissing her forehead with all the affection he could offer. Now, both of them couldn't wait for what might be the best news yet. In the waiting room of the Obegyn clinic, Yin sat nervously, clutching Jungkook's hand. Her palms were cold and slightly sweaty. Jungkook turned to look at her and squeezed her hand tighter, offering the kind of warmth words couldn't express. "If it turns out I'm not pregnant, don't laugh at me, okay?" Yin whispered, a little embarrassed. Jungkook gave a small smile. "I won't laugh, but if you are pregnant, I don't want you to feel scared or overwhelmed, okay?" Yin nodded softly, though the shy smile on her lips gave her away. A few minutes later, they entered the exam room. The doctor greeted them kindly, performed the transvaginal ultrasound, and within seconds, a grainy black and white image appeared on the screen. The doctor smiled. "Congratulations, you're pregnant, ma'am, about 4 weeks along." Yin stared at the screen, then slowly turned to look at Jungkook. His eyes were wide, as if he was only now grasping the full meaning behind that tiny image. "So, I'm really pregnant?" she murmured. The doctor nodded. "Yes, we'll continue monitoring the baby's development closely." Yin covered her mouth with her hand, tears instantly pooling in her eyes. Jungkook, who always looked composed and unreadable, now looked different. His eyes shimmered with emotion, and a soft, stunned smile broke across his face. As they walked out of the exam room, Yin clung sweetly to Jungkook's arm, holding him close. "We're going to be parents," she said, her voice trembling slightly. While walking, Jungkook gently stroked her head with one hand. "Yeah, and I'm happy. I'm really happy." That day marked a new beginning for both of them, for their marriage, for the little family they were now forming, one built with love, patience, and hope, slowly healing all the wounds of the past.